We know that's the core of our salvation, but we start losing that joy of what John 3:16 means to us. So what I want to do is I want to restore back what Proverbs 31 is. And what I want to do is to tell you what the theme is about. The theme of Proverbs 31 says, charm is deceitful and beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And that's really the fundamental idea. She fears the Lord. And you can see that a lot of the actions that you see stem from fearing the Lord. That's where everything comes from. So, as we go on to So as we go on to Proverbs 31, verse 10, I was actually planning to read it with you guys together, but I'm going to skip that because we all read that for responsive reading. So I'm going to go straight to the point and start with verse 10. So, like I said before, that's our theme. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. And for those who are going through the book of Proverbs, the fear of the Lord is the key theme of the book. We had some technical difficulties, so bear with me. This is sort of like our go-to situation. And so the theme of the fear of the Lord, that's the phrase, the fear of the Lord, is a key theme of the book of Proverbs. That phrase is mentioned 14 times, and the concept is repeated around 37 times. The fear of the Lord is a big deal, and we had a sermon series that talked about it in length. For our purposes today, the fear of the Lord is what makes the virtuous woman awesome. This is what makes her stand above all the other women. And this idea is actually carried out in the New Testament, but more in a general sense. In 1 Peter 3:3-4, it says, "Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God." So understand that the fear of the Lord and the inner beauty of a woman mentioned here are connected. As an immediate application for the single ladies, having the fear of the Lord will attract the one God has for you. Girls, you can attract any guy you want, especially the wrong one if you focus on outward beauty. But if you want the right one, focus on your inner beauty, which I believe is the fear of the Lord. And so those are some of the things that we see here. It's not something that's just Old Testament. It also carries through the New Testament in a general sense. Proverbs 1. Okay, so what I want you to do is also see the beauty behind the poetry of this book. It starts off with the fear of the Lord in Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And in the final chapter, in the closing, it says, "Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised." And so the beauty of the book of Proverbs, so that you don't miss it, is that it starts off in the beginning and it closes it off at the end. So I want you to see the poetry, the symmetry that's behind the writing of the book of Proverbs. Now, let's see what the fear of the Lord produces in a woman. We start with verse 10. "Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies." Now, this is a poetic statement, not because it's just using a metaphor or a way of valuing her above rubies. But those who have been going through the book of Proverbs will actually catch this phrase. You've read it before, right? You've read this phrase before. And so this is actually a term used in the pursuit of wisdom. Look at this verse here. In verse 15, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 15, it says, "She is more precious than rubies, in all things you may desire cannot compare with her. They're talking about wisdom, not the mom, but not the virtuous woman. But she's compared. It's very similar to this. It's also said in Proverbs 8:11, for wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things one may desire cannot be compared with her. So I want you to understand that these repeated descriptions aren't an accident. He's doing them purposely to make a point. Okay? So the idea is that the pursuit of wisdom, this is supposed to the kind of thing that you want to have. Get wisdom, for she's more precious than rubies. In the same way, they're saying the same thing. Get a virtuous woman, for her worth is precious than rubies. So you want to be able to make this connection. What is it basically saying? How is this woman becoming a virtuous woman? And so we go on. Hopefully this goes clicking. There it is. We go back to the theme again, right? So it compares wisdom to the virtuous woman being far above rubies. Now we're going to see if we can make the connection. In Psalms 111 verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do his commandments. His praise endures forever. And then Proverbs 31 verse 10, charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So you naturally conclude that the virtual woman that a man wants to marry is a woman who has wisdom, because when she fears the Lord, it's the beginning of wisdom. So that virtuous woman has wisdom. And then when you look at wisdom in Proverbs, she's compared above rubies. So that's why she's so awesome. And she started off with the fear of God, because the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So I want to talk a little bit about wisdom. And, you young people have been going on through the book of Proverbs. Wisdom is said to be the knowledge of is the ability to apply knowledge correctly. It's almost like a concept, or even like a way of skill. But as we go through the book of Proverbs, the poetry that happens here, they use personification, but they use personification in a way that it actually sounds like it's a person that you know. So when you go through the book of Proverbs, wisdom isn't a concept. It's a person. It literally is a person. So we'll go into that chapter right now. In Proverbs chapter 8, verses 21 to 31, it says, when God, prepared the heavens, wisdom, was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he established the clouds above. When he strengthened the fountains of the deep. When he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters would not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was beside him as a master craftsman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and my delight was with the sons of men. Now, an idea doesn't delight with the sons of men, but that's what wisdom is described here. So yeah, in a way, when King Solomon is describing wisdom, he's personifying it into a woman. But it's interesting that at the end of the day, he's called to fear God, listen to his parents, pursue wisdom. And in his pursuit of wisdom, he finds at the end a virtuous woman who's like wisdom. Okay? So I want you to understand this personification, that wisdom isn't just this concept, it's this person. And I will get to who that person is in a moment. But for now, I want you to understand this concept. So like I said earlier, the device that the author used was personification. And personification is the attribution of a personal nature or a human characteristic to something non-human, or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. So although you don't see wisdom as a person, it's kind of like using this device to make it look like a person. Now, the question to ask is, why do they do that? Why do they do that? The reason why they use personification here. Okay, let me go ahead and, sorry. I'm really out of it. Okay, so the reason why they use personification, and it's for the most part, they do this to help us relate to the situation or topic or develop a new perspective on something. And that's exactly what the author wanted to do in Proverbs chapter 8, 27 to 31. The new perspective that he wanted for all of us to adopt is that wisdom isn't this ability. It's a person that you want to get to know. It's a person that you want to pursue. And so I want you to keep that in mind, because later on you're going to see how this Proverbs woman who fears the Lord because she has wisdom acts out in wisdom. She acts out in the character of the wisdom that she knows, of the person that she knows. Okay? So when you start seeing all these things and be like, man, this person's a superwoman. Like, you can't do all that. I can't do all that. You're right. They're not supposed to. But that's because she has a person with them. So I'll describe that person later as we get deeper into it. For now, we'll start with the thesis statement. Proverbs 31, verses 11 through 12. The heart of her husband safely trusts her. She will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. So that's pretty much the thesis statement. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. And it's going to start listing to you all the good that she does. So that's what it will do. I want you to also understand how the husband just kind of reacts to the woman. How he safely trusts her. Okay? And this idea of safely trusting her is sort of like, I don't know how to put it. It's almost as though because, okay, hold on. It says in Scripture, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In a way, when she trusts her, it's like he's not worried about what she's going to do and kind of like, hey, you got to do it this way. You don't do that. He kind of just says, you know what? Wife, just do it because I know you're going to do it right. That sort of assurance. Okay? So that's the same idea. The same idea that he had towards wisdom, as he's learning it, is the same sort of idea he's having towards this virtuous woman. Okay, he's having that sort of same feeling. Okay, so remember how I talked to you about trust. It says here, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. So her heart safely trusts her. She trusts in the Lord shall be saved. So they're using that sort of poetry to make this connection. So let me put it this way to you. The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever fears the Lord shall be saved, because the fear of the Lord is wisdom. The husband in the previous passage safely trusts his wife because she clearly has wisdom. Not the kind of wisdom that's a concept, the wisdom that's an actual person, a person she can safely trust. And it's not the relationship that she has with wisdom that causes her husband to safely trust her. It's also this relationship that causes the virtuous woman to do good things to her husband and not evil all the days of his life. The following verses give us a picture of what the good looks like. I believe this isn't a comprehensive list, but an example of the good that she does. It says in verse 31, verse 13 and 14, she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. And wool and flax are items people use to make fabric, which in turn makes clothes. And while most mothers here do not make clothes, they do make sure that their children are clothed. The picture of a woman working with her hands shows her diligence to clothe her family. And you know, I can remember back in the day when my mom got here and all she had was 50 cents in the Snickers bar and I was crying. And you know, my mom would try her best to go to a thrift store to go and clothe me and go to Payless shoe store to put on Pro Wings on my feet. You know, the thing is, women don't have the ability to make things. If they did, then yeah, it would have been a whole lot cheaper. But you know, they do their best to make sure that their family are clothed. And that's the idea that you want to see here. She takes wool and flax and she willingly works with her hands. Okay? It also says she's like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She's also described as a merchant ship to bring her food. And in other words, she isn't just feeding you for the sake of feeding you. She wants to be sure that what you eat is the best of what she has and that you like it. And I know most of the time, Ate Celia will cook Filipino food, but sometimes she'll make her ceviche, right? And then there's sometimes, Serena will bring her pozole, right? And so these people are bringing their food from afar. It's like that. They're not just going, hey, I'm just giving you what you need. Here's some vitamins and some bread and water. That's all you need, so go on and move, right? No, they actually take the time to want to make you happy with what you eat. And that's the idea that they're using here with this metaphor. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar, So in a way, maybe that's what Panda Express used. Hey, yeah, this is from China, like from the Far East, right? Cook it with a wok, so it makes it feel like you're going foreign. But that's the same idea. I hate to spoil it for you guys, but orange chicken is not legitimately Chinese. It's American Chinese, but it's still good though. So remember, all these things that you're seeing right here are coming from the thesis statement. And she does good all the days of her life. But it also stems from the fact that she fears the Lord, as we see later on. We go on to the next chapter. She also rises while it's yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. And this describes how hardworking she is. And while most of you women do not rise early to make food for your family as soon as they wake up, most of you rise up very early to make sure money comes in for your family. Not only do you do that, but sometimes you use what you earn to be a blessing to other people. And that's the idea of providing a portion to your maidservants. So not only do you wake up very early to provide for your family, but sometimes you'll see a person across the street or by the store, and you'll also give them something too because you see their need. And what motivates you to do that? Because you're a nice person? No, I don't know if we're nice people. But there's something that there's a nice person within you that's causing you to do those things. We go on to the next slide here. Verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. From her profits, she plants a vineyard. In other words, she knows how to find a good deal. She might find a good price on a house or a piece of land, or she might find a good deal at a swap meet. Whatever it is, she looks for deals and ways to save. And she also looks at ways to make money too. Sometimes it will come from mentioning a job opportunity for her household, or maybe she finds extra work to make extra cash. Whatever it is, that's what it's pretty much saying. All right? So when you look at this proverb, you're like, man, I'm not like that. I can't find a property and buy it and make a vineyard. I don't have that kind of a mind. No, you're actually doing it. Honestly, you're actually doing it. And there's a reason why you do it. I'll tell you that reason later. Verse 17. She girds herself with strength, and she strengthens her arms. Maybe she goes to the gym, but that's possible. But I don't think that's what it's saying here. When you read all the good that she does for her husband, I don't think any human being can do what she does. Waking up early in the morning, making sure that everyone has... Do you know how long it takes to make really good food? Well, I've been practicing stuff like that, and I'm not really good at cooking. But man, it does take a long time. For me, it does. Sometimes it takes me 2 hours to do, because I'm doing my prep work, I'm taking out the food, I'm kind of seasoning my salmon, and then, I make sure that I put my foil on my tray, because if I don't, then it becomes really, really hard to clean. It's a lot of work, man, because after you're done cooking, then you have to clean up. And that even takes longer. And then I gotta make sure that the stove is clean, because that's not my stuff. I can't just leave it like that. So I take out my spray cleaner, I spray everything down. And by that time, after I've been eating for 30 minutes, it takes me about maybe 5 hours to do. That's how long it takes me, because I want to because it's not my house. I gotta be clean. So I resorted to going to McDonald's because they have 2 for $5. Because I know it's just easier to clean and fed, you know. But I know, but I want you to understand, okay? I want you to understand that what they're describing here as a mom, this ain't easy. And you cannot expect a mom to be doing that if she doesn't have the power to do these things. And so she says here, she girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. I don't think an amount of time in the gym can make you do what you do there. But I will tell you how you renew your strength, though. And I believe this is what she does, because she has a fear of the Lord. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. In other words, a woman who fears the Lord is a woman who waits on the Lord. And the way you wait on the Lord, of course, typically is praying. And the way you pray is similar to this. God, I'm tired. I had a 12-hour shift last night, and I just got to be sure that my kids are ready, because sometimes my son, he doesn't want to wake up when it's time to wake up. So I have to wake him up, and then I got to get his lunch ready. I can't do all this. I get frustrated. I feel like I want to scream at my son for who he is. You know, I can't do this by myself, God. You got to help me. And so as she's praying and waiting on God, God will provide her the strength to move forward. So that's how she girds herself with strength. In verse 18 and 19, she perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds a spindle. Now, this term merchandise isn't what we think it is. So let's go look at a different translation. And the reason why I say that is because when I was a kid, I watched The Price is Right, and they would bring out all this merchandise, so I thought that's what merchandise is, you know? But the Hebrew has a different translation of what merchandise is. To get a better idea, let's look at a different translation. It says in the NASB, she senses that her gain is good, and her lamp does not go out at night. So merchandise here actually means a gain or profit. It means her profit. Let me put it over there. She perceives that her profit is good, okay? And her lamp does not go out by night. All right, so that's the idea there. So just so that you guys are convinced that I'm not pulling your chain with these translations, I'm going to give you direct Hebrew translation so you know what it is. And I can't pronounce that in Hebrew, but it literally means trading profit. That's the definition of it all. So all the wool and flax, the food that she makes that feels like it came from a merchant ship, and the land that produced a vineyard, all made a profit for her. Because she sees its progress, she continues her hard work. Verse 19 describes how she continues her profitable work by putting her hand to the spindle, meaning she continues her progress in what causes profit. In this case, the clothing industry is profitable, so she continues her work in that. Now, these are all metaphors, okay? It's describing her hard work. So in other words, when she sees that something is actually working, she doesn't stop by allowing it just to be that way. She continues to make it better, right? She continues her work. And so that's the idea of the virtuous woman. Now, again, I know I'm reiterating it, but again, the thesis statement is she does him good all the days of his life. And then the underlying idea is that she fears the Lord. I didn't show you the definition, did I? See, I feel like I'm showing you guys these things, but I'm not. There it is. That's trading profit. You got to remember to click. Okay. Verse 20. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. Now again, remember that this is an expansion of Proverbs 31, verse 12. She does good and not evil all the days of her husband's life. The example describes the good she does. And notice that her generosity isn't towards her family or her husband. It's outside her home. And she isn't just concerned about her immediate family. We know that she does this on the basis of wisdom or having the fear of the Lord. So let's review that and reflect what she does. He who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker, but he who honors him has mercy on the needy. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. That's exactly what wisdom is teaching her. And she's applying that. Because she fears the Lord, she honors him. And the way she honors him is by having mercy on the needy. And that's why she reaches her hand out to the needy. She also reaches out to the needy because she knows the Lord. It says here, he who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. So she is assured how God rewards those who show mercy. Her fear of God also drives her to continue to do good to the poor, because she's aware of the consequences that she will experience if she doesn't. And she also understands that God is going to pay her back. Whoever shuts his ear to the cry of the poor will also cry himself and not be heard. And so she understands that I got to take care of them because I fear God. And so that's one of the reasons why we have the food ministry. You know, honestly, we got ourselves into a big deficit this year because of those 2 refrigerators. And then you ask yourself, well, why do you do that? It's going against your favor. It's not like they benefit you at all. Well, I just know that somehow God will repay us for what we do for the needy. And I also know that if we don't hear the cries of the needy, then eventually God's not going to hear us anymore. And so we have to be able to reach out that way. Okay, verse 20. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives his bread to the poor. She understands that to receive blessings from God, she must be a blessing to others. And the action from the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning, and this action comes from the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. As a side note, this is why we do food distribution next week, as I just mentioned earlier. 21 and 22. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Now this is a bit of a mystery. How in the world does scarlet keep you warm during the winter? Like, a color doesn't keep you warm in the winter. I don't care if, like, your shirt's made out of cotton. If you just color it scarlet, you're going to be cold if it's just a t-shirt. So what in the world is scarlet? Why are they using scarlet to make sure that you're actually warm? So I looked into this a little bit, and I used a Messianic Jewish Bible to give me clarity. And it says this: when it snows, she has no fear of her household, since all of them are doubly clothed. So scarlet means double. Like, how could that be, right? So in order for you to understand that, I got to go ahead and bring you back to the Hebrew term. Because double and scarlet are almost like the same thing. They almost are like the same thing. So the Hebrew term for this is sanim. It's a deep scarlet. And it's also the term to use for twice dye. And here's the idea. When you make scarlet, the scarlet color back in those days, they got it from like a worm's eggs. Okay, they got it from a worm's eggs. And if your cloth wanted to be really fancy and really have that nice red, then you would smash these eggs and dip the cloth twice into the scarlet pool that the eggs made. All right, so it would be this red. And we're not Hebrews, so when they use terms like this, it would be easily understood when they would say things like that. So when they say, oh, yeah, when you're going out to winter, make sure you have scarlet clothing, you're like, do they mean put on red clothing? No, they mean you put on 2 things when you get on there. Okay, that's how they would understand it. Okay, so to give you some background, and again, this has been a huge debate with scholars because they still don't completely understand how to interpret this passage. This is from the Blue Letter Bible. Most commentators think that the Hebrew word rendered scarlet would be more correctly translated by the marginal reading double garments. It is thus rendered by Boothroyd in this version of Scripture, and the Septuagint and Arabic versions give it thus: the twice dyeing, which formed part of the process used in obtaining the brilliant scarlet of the East, cause this color to be expressed in the original language by the verb to redouble, and thus leaves the rendering in some measure doubtful. In other words, scholars don't know if they should keep it doubly or scarlet, because if you leave it as scarlet, I can go really spiritual on that and show you that Christ's blood is scarlet, and that's what clothes you in righteousness. So you can go with that too. But at the same time, I don't want to over-spiritualize things. I want to be accurate with the text as well. So whatever it is, if you want to get the main idea, it's just basically saying that this woman here, because she has the fear of the Lord, she's always proactive in her preparation. And she will always be ready when trials come for her family, because she prepares them properly. And you can take that very long. You read earlier in verse 22, right, that she makes tapestry for herself, and her clothing is fine linen and purple. Now, the idea of wearing fine linen and purple will be described later on. But just know that the metaphor means that she's very stylish and she's very royal looking, the way she dresses. But that's a metaphor. We'll talk about what that metaphor really means. But does anyone know what tapestry is? The art of tapestry? Jonathan?
Like, I think it's like curtains. Like it's just like fabric. You're just like making kind of like curtains.
Okay, that's good.
It decorates the wall.
Right, you use it for decoration in the wall. Man, I looked into the work of tapestry. That thing isn't a joke. That thing needs to be done by hand.
It's really hard.
It is very hard. It's this idea that when you make this cloth, that the warped, because normally when you see things that are clothing, like for example, like my pants, you'll see the stitches and stuff, right? You'll see where it got stitched up. With this tapestry, this cloth, you don't see any of that. It's as though all that warped stuff is hidden in this work of art. And tapestry is like amazing. When I started looking into it, this actually took me a long time to get out of the sermon, because I needed to figure out what they meant by tapestry. And so let me go ahead and show you a piece of tapestry here. Okay? Let me go show that to you guys real quick. Okay. I don't know, this is hard to appreciate. Can someone kill the lights for a little bit? Hopefully we don't drown it out. Let me see. Thanks, Phil. Okay, so this is a piece of tapestry. Okay, to me, it looked like some dude just kind of like made a rug and started painting on it. That's not what happened. They got, like in one area, they're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and weave this in with this fabric, this color fabric, and then switch it out and then weave it in this color. So it's like they're coloring while they're sewing stuff to form that picture. So it takes a long time. One of the ones that are famous for tapestry is actually in France. There's an art form there, and they've stood to that tradition. I want you to guess how much this tapestry costs.
In American dollars?
In American dollars, just guess.
$3 million.
That's pretty good.
Maybe 5, maybe 5.5. Yeah, 5.
Well, I'm glad you guys are having those high standards. For this one, though, it's just $110,000, but it's still expensive. You can buy other tapestries that are like $200 and stuff. This one's about $110,000, and that's something they're willing to sell. But the really, really good ones, the really good one is from Peter Paul Rubens, and he's a painter. He's an oil painter, but he decides that he wants to go ahead and make the story of Achilles in 7 tapestry works. Okay, so this is his work here. Okay, sorry. And that to me looks like a painting. It's as though he got a canvas and he painted, but no, it didn't. And I wish I could show you the picture of it, because it looks like a photograph. It's like you can't even see the weaves in it. You probably have to go really, really up close to do this. And maybe in that sense, this is like up to the millions, because they're not going to sell it to you. It's a very, very hard work. And so anyway, before I get you lost in the details of tapestry, it says that the virtuous woman makes tapestry for herself. And you're like, no, man, that's crazy. But the idea that you want to go, that you want to get from that is that there's nothing that she can't do. She can do everything. You know, she does this, she manages this, and she's able to do this. And I know that Atareya is not the kind of person that's artsy, but if you saw her today, you know, before Sunday school, she was back there doing like crafts and stuff. And Emily was like, Mom, you're doing some arts and crafts and stuff. It's like, yeah, I know, but you know, I got to do it. It's the idea that she does everything. You know, she does everything. All right, verse 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. And so behind a great man is a great woman. Or in other words, if men want a great woman, they have to be great too. And that's the reason why that man is great. It's because there's a great woman behind him. The idea of going in the gates. Okay, this is another Hebrew metaphor. Not even a Hebrew metaphor, it's just part of the culture. The gates are is like the town square. That's where you say everything. If you were going to judge somebody, you would go to the gates. You want to know why? Because if that person did bad, you would immediately exile them out of your city. Okay, so the gates were a symbol of high stature. That's where you did all your conduct, in the town square. So this guy is actually famous, and the reason why he's famous is because he has a woman who fears the Lord. Verse 24 and 25, she makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sachets for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in the time to come. So remember how she was up all night, having her hands in the spindle in verses 18 and 19? Well, this is the result of her work. She makes a profit. She's industrious and she's such a hard worker that her family and husband can be happy with what she does. And her clothing, it's described as being luxurious purple. But what you see here is that it literally is strength and honor. That's who she is. So this luxurious purple that you see is not something from the outside. It's what she looks like in the inside. That luxurious purple is her strength and honor. And you'll notice those terms used even today. You ever wondered why they use the purple heart? Right? So strength and honor, purple heart, clothed in fine purple. That's the idea of her. Okay? She has that within herself. Okay. And she opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. Again, recall that the wisdom is what the wisdom that the virtuous woman has is not a concept, but it's a person. Okay, and so when she speaks in character of that person that's within her. That's the wisdom that's being referred to. And so as a result of that, there's kindness there. Okay, I'll share that later. Verse 26 and 27. Actually, 27 and 28. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also, and he praises her. Again, she's such a hard worker. She loves her family so much that she doesn't think about slacking at all. And honestly, this reminds me of Atiseli, because she works so hard to take care of her immediate family, and then she works hard again to take care of Kuya Eddie and also her Kuya Arlo. And so, to me, Atiseli really is something. So when I see her children rising up and praising her, it reminds me of her 50th birthday on her golden goblet. It reminds me of this moment right here. When her children naturally literally praised her. That was back in 2014. So I use it because it makes sense. And I'm making a point when I'm using these hard-code examples. Okay? When I think about taking care of the needy, right? The person that comes to mind, I'll be honest with you, is Miss Carrie. Because, she takes, she's a great mom. But you notice that she's always taking care of people like a mom, like she's everybody's mom. So where's that coming from? You're like, what is causing you to do that? And I believe it's a fear of God, that she's accountable to somebody. She's not doing it just because, you're going to smile and you're going to, be appreciative. And sometimes she's not even looking to be appreciated. She just does it. And so I believe there's a fear of God, there's wisdom, there's a person that's within her that causes her to do this. So we finally go on to our final chapter, as we close it out here. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And we know that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? So here's what Job says about wisdom. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to depart from evil is understanding. So I want you to understand that this woman that we're called to go after, just as we're called to go after wisdom, is a woman that has wisdom, right? But what's wisdom, right? I know I've been telling you guys for a long time, who is this person that I'm referring to? Maybe you guys already have an idea, but I want to give it to you plain in Scripture so you guys understand the concept. So, remember how I talked about in Proverbs chapter 8, that wisdom was with God, with the creation, right? And he was daily his delight, and wisdom delighted in the sons of men. Well, the unveiling of what wisdom is actually comes in the New Testament. And this is what we find. To those who are called both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. The reason why the virtuous woman is able to do what she does is because Christ lives within her. The reason why she's able to speak about wisdom and be gentle is because Christ is within her. So it's really, when you think about the fear of God and how it leads you to wisdom, it's because Christ motivates her to be this way. Now, granted, she's not going to be very perfect, but Christ is molding her to be that image. And what you notice is that whenever she does get tired, she gets frustrated, she goes back to God and repents, and then she tries again. And that's the kind of character that we want, single guys, in a woman. We want a woman who fears God and has a strong relationship with God, because this is what gives her the ability to do all the things that you see. So, in closing, perfect. Here it is. So what we want to see is that the virtuous woman that is far above rubies is a woman just like all of you. All you moms here who have put their faith in Christ Jesus are this woman that's being described here. You do all of this. You might not think, well, I can't meet that standard. I'm not the one buying land and making a vineyard and making a profit. I'm not up all night making all these things. Maybe you're not, but you do it in different ways and you're getting to that direction. All of you are this virtuous woman, mothers. And that's why we have Mother's Day, and that's why we honor you, and that's why we praise you. Because we know that each time when we wake up in the morning, we see your example, we see Christ in your life, and not your selfishness and what you want. So moms, thank you for showing us the way to Christ and being who you are. Thank you for being hardworking, as Christ was hardworking, and obtaining our salvation. Thank you for being patient with us, just as Christ was patient with us when we failed. Because in actuality, I can see it now. It's not really you. It's really God working in you. So, happy Mother's Day, all. Thank you for showing us Christ in your lives. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today.